And again, this is all about the celebration and making the French feel welcome, according to administration officials. After that, the two leaders, Presidents Biden and Macron, will have a bilateral meeting and then host a press conference. Our own Ed O'Keefe will be there in the room, hoping to ask some questions, although in this setting, it's what we call a 2-by-2, which means the President of the United States will call on two journalists, as will Macron. And so it's not one of those press conferences where, you know, if you raise your hand or if he has a list, you might get a question because 10 to 12 people get a question. So let's cross our fingers for Ed. He'll be in there either way. And then tonight, of course, is the big state dinner that we have been talking about. So it is a full day, a gorgeous day here in Washington. And there are American and French flags pretty much on every corner near the White House that you can see. And right here you're seeing as well. Not only is the White House dressed up for Christmas, but also there are, French flags and bunting here as well.
All right. Well, lovely to see the sunshine compared to yesterday.
Yes.
Of course, we're going to continue to cover all the goings on in Washington. As soon as the first family of France arrives at the White House, we'll go live there. Ouija, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, the number of Americans applying for first-time jobless benefits dropped. 225,000 people filed for unemployment in the week ending November 26. That's down 16,000 from the week before. Economists say this low level of unemployment shows the U.S. labor market remains largely unaffected by the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes. And it could be up to the Senate to avert a national rail strike, which could be devastating for our economy.
The House packed a bill to force an agreement yesterday. It's controversial, but the move comes at a time when many businesses are under immense pressure before the holidays. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland reports.
For Charles Hawkins in the hardware store he manages in Washington, this is crunch time. Holiday sales keep them profitable.
This feels like a sensitive time of year for you all, for your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We pretty much wait the entire year for this.
Even the smallest interruption or inventory shortage can rattle the business, much less a large supply chain disruption from a railway labor strike.
Once things start to sell, you need to replenish. So it's very, very important to actually be able to get things delivered.
A nearly century-old law gives Congress the power to resolve labor disputes involving the nation's railroads. And President Biden asked congressional leaders to do so, as the impasse between some rail unions and the industry is now perilously close to a December 9th deadline.
The joint resolution is passed.
The House voted on a bill to force through the latest offer to rail workers.
Let me be clear, a nationwide rail shutdown would be catastrophic.
That deal includes 24% raises over 5 years and some bonus payments, but does not include the 7 days of paid sick leave for which some unions have been fighting.
Our members told us that sick leave is the number one concern. People are working outdoors. They're dangerous jobs in many cases. So I think, sick leave is an important aspect to it.
The House passed a separate provision Wednesday to provide the sick days, but the Senate would have to do the same. Some Republicans say they shouldn't be involved in the first place.
This administration is asking the federal government to use the force of federal law to impose contract terms that the workers have voted against. So I'm not for that.
U.S. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg meet with Senate Democrats today with averting this rail strike at the top of the agenda. But there is still no decision on when the Senate will vote today. Vlad, Anne-Marie.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. Former President Barack Obama will campaign in Atlanta today in support of incumbent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock. Warnock is in a tight race against Republican challenger Herschel Walker. Voters will have one last chance to head to the polls Tuesday, but more than 830,000 Georgians have already voted ahead of Election Day.
So let's take you to Capitol Hill now, where Democrats unanimously voted to elect Congressman Hakeem Jeffries to be their new House Minority Leader. The 52-year-old Brooklyn native makes history as the first black lawmaker to be a party leader in Congress. Jeffries will take on his new role in January when the new Congress is sworn in. Republicans also take control of the House then. And Jeffries will take over for Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who announced that she was stepping down earlier this month. Pelosi also made history at the time of her election as the first woman to become House Speaker. Jeffries will serve with Massachusetts Congresswoman Catherine Clark, who was elected as the second-ranking Democrat. California Congressman Pete Aguilar will become the party's caucus chairman.
The January 6th committee is meeting tomorrow to discuss potentially issuing more criminal referrals as it completes a final report on its investigation. The panel is set to discuss the possibility of a criminal referral to the Justice Department against Donald Trump and key allies of the former president. Members of the committee are also considering making referrals to state bar associations for potential ethics violation by attorneys. In a letter sent yesterday, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy issued a warning to the committee demanding it preserve its records, including what doesn't make it into the final report. That is expected to be released sometime before Christmas. Attorney General Merrick Garland also expressed interest in those records to help the Justice Department's investigation.
Well, China is allowing some districts to leave COVID lockdown as widespread protests continue in response to the nation's zero COVID policy. As Holly Williams reports, there haven't been protests like this since the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989.
Down with the Communist Party, they shouted on the streets of Shanghai, an eruption of anger against a one-party state in power for over 70 years.
Takes courage to go out to the street to protest.
Zhang Lijia is a Chinese journalist based in London. She says the last time China saw anything like this was in 1989. When university students led demonstrations in Beijing's Tiananmen Square.
This is the first time since 1989 we've seen protesters explicitly calling for the downfall of the Communist Party.
This is the first time.
So this is huge.
This is huge, yeah.
Zhang led a pro-democracy protest herself in 1989 in the southern city of Nanjing and says she was interrogated by the police.
And how dangerous is it to hold a protest like that in China, calling for the downfall of the Communist Party?
Very likely those leaders who leaded chants will end up in prison or maybe even worse.
The Tiananmen protests ended with a ruthless crackdown. A bloody massacre carried out by China's military. But Zhang says the upheaval in 1989 forced China's leaders to give their people more personal and economic freedom. It's been a recipe for success until recently, with heavy-handed COVID restrictions forcing entire neighborhoods into quarantine.
Chinese people have a reputation being gentle or even docile, but the people are not stupid.
In 1989, did you learn something about the ruthlessness of the Communist Party?
Certainly, yes. Until the last minute, we did not believe that the government would really open fire to its own people. And the lesson is they would do anything to preserve their power.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is slamming the U.S. and NATO at his annual news conference in Moscow today. He said both are playing a direct and dangerous role in Ukraine.
Lavrov also accused the U.S. and NATO of ratcheting up tensions in the South China Sea and defending Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. Meanwhile, air raid alerts were issued across Ukraine today. CBS News foreign correspondent MTS Tayeb has the latest from Kherson.
Well, we're here in the main square of Kherson City, which just a few weeks ago was the scene of huge celebrations after Ukrainian forces were able to push Russia out of here after 9 long months of occupation. Today, this is where those who still live in this city come to stay warm. You can probably see that red tent behind me. That is a warming station where people go, they can plug in their phones, they can get some medicine and get some food. Because make no mistake, even though Russia was forced out of here, they are just 3 miles away. And overnight, they targeted this city, targeting the infrastructure, and many Ukrainians here are waking up in the bitter, bitter cold. Still, of the people we've been speaking to, they say they would rather live without water, without food, without electricity, than live under Russian occupation again. Anne-Marie.
MTS, thank you.
Still got a lot more news to get to this morning, including the latest on the deadly storms that slammed the South. Dozens of tornadoes destroyed homes and buildings across multiple states. We're going to take you to Alabama, where the cleanup is underway.
And San Francisco tries out robo-cops. Why city leaders gave police the go-ahead to use robots that can kill, after warning that the technology could be abused.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future.
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. When weather turns extreme.
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell. People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go!
CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
So let's get you back to the White House, where President Biden is greeting French President Emmanuel Macron and the two first ladies, of course. This is going to be President Biden's first official state dinner, and that'll happen later on today. But in the meantime, throughout the day, there'll be lots to talk about, Vlad. The concerns that the two countries shared. I'm sure there'll be issues regarding trade, but of course, showing a united front against Russia with the war in Ukraine. I'm sure there will be issues connected to trade and also a united front in the face of Chinese expansion. You name it. I mean, the world has become quite a small place since COVID.
Yeah. And there will be a state dinner later this evening. Obviously, we're going to keep you apprised of all that is happening this morning in the White House. There you see the French president leading the president almost sort of put his hand on his back there and say, hey, let's walk over and say hi to the vice president of the United States and her husband, Doug. All right, we're going to keep an eye on those images. Meanwhile, residents in southern parts of the country are cleaning up after multiple tornadoes swept across the region. Dozens of sightings were reported across Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, with more than 7 confirmed. At least 2 people were reportedly killed in Alabama, and thousands remain without power. CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez has the very latest from the state capitol in Montgomery.
Good morning. This was the community center for this neighborhood, and you can see it's destroyed.